Hi, everybody, to another episode of Faith Greater Than Fear. Did you know we've done over 30 of these episodes now, and you can always go back to our archives through Facebook and through our website to go and look up any of them, because we've talked to students, we've talked to ministers, we've talked to business people, we've talked to men, we've talked to women, we've talked to people from here locally, and we've talked to people around the world. And God just has been using them in great ways. And today I'm really, really thrilled to have a deep personal connection and friendship with our guest today. His name is Bob Sartoris. We're here in Joplin, Missouri, where GNPI is located, and Bob is up the road, if you will, in Indianapolis, Indiana. And I'm just going to ask Bob some questions, and he's going to give you the history of how our families connect a little bit here. But Bob, welcome to our program today.
Glad to be on, Mike.
Thank you. Oh, goodness. Probably in our fourth month of these Faith Greater Than Fear episodes. And it all started in March when we were having the lockdown and a response to just having to talk to one another. And the COVID virus was around, and it was creating a havoc, and it was creating a lot of illness and so forth. And we were fortunate as an office here and our offices around the world not to have an infection or test positive for it. That wasn't the case with yourself. Tell our audience just a little bit about your own experience with the COVID-19 virus.
Well, you're right. Back in February, several of our ministry plans started being canceled. A conference here, conference there, a training scheduled in April was also canceled. And it really started changing the dynamics of what our ministry would be doing for the next couple of months. And in fact, that's continuing to leave questions about what direction do we go. Fortunately, the Lord has opened opportunities during this lockdown and I have to say, if anything, I maybe feel a little more busy than I've been. So that's a huge blessing. But along about middle of March, I was returning from a trip just to Ohio, and just started feeling kind of lousy, just worn out. And I got a case of pink eye and was nauseous, and went to the doctor, and they didn't think anything of it. They didn't swab me or anything, but gave me some drops for my eyes and sent me on my way. 48 hours later, fever broke. And within another day, I was flat on my back. I couldn't get out of bed. The aches were just excruciating. I couldn't eat. It even hurt to drink water. And fortunately, I have some other health issues, asthmatic conditions, so I'm already taking medicine for that. And as soon as I did come down with the fever, I reached out to my cardiac team and said, what should I do? Should I come in and be tested? Or they put me in touch with a COVID triage team who called me back and set up an online exam. That team walked through the protocol of questions and, it basically determined that for now I should stay put. And they ordered different medications for my breathing issues and told me what to monitor. Fortunately, there's 2 nurses in our family, so I was able to get a pulse ox monitor to start tracking my blood oxygen level. And it started dropping. Fever got worse. I actually had fever for 8 days. And about day 4, I started to cough. And I just was almost terrified of what this might mean. I didn't want to have to walk away from my family and be isolated in a hospital by myself where no one could see me or talk to me. And so I prayed, and I know Jane was downstairs praying just as much. And it really, it was a scary time. It was a time when all of my future plans just seemed like so much up in the air that, would I ever get a chance to finish writing that course or doing my monthly thank you letters for our supporters, or everything was on the table. And it after 8 days, the fever finally broke. The nauseousness and the aches continued for another 3 or 4 days. And at the end of it, I was able to just totally rejoice that God had brought me through it. And I could see, it took me another week or week and a half till I really bounced back to, some semblance of normalcy. But at the same time, I was just so blessed that I didn't have to go on a ventilator. I didn't have to isolate at a hospital somewhere. So, and eventually I had the testing to prove it was indeed COVID, and just have been amazed at how God brought me through that. In spite of all of my health conditions combined, it still allowed me to keep going. My doctors, the COVID team said I had a moderate case, and one step higher would have been definite hospitalization. So I just am grateful that prayers stopped it where it was in its tracks.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing the story. And I know a lot of us are, not positive or either asymptomatic or don't even know, really. You knew, you felt. And I thought it was good for our audience to really hear from someone who has experienced and gone through it and survived, as what I really want to hear. And what I hope you hear is that Bob said, the prayers of people were very, very effectual at that time. So Bob, you and I have a long history, and tell our audience just real quickly where it started and what you did with your family, both here locally and then overseas, to catch our family up that's watching today.
Well, actually, we first met through Ziden.
Yep.
I had just finished film school and talked with Ziden about being available to put my skills in media production to use for Good News Productions, and said if there are any opportunities that come along that I could help with, feel free to reach out to me. And it was finally, I guess, in '93 that you and Kirk Hayes were back in the States to talk with Ziden about establishing the center in East Africa. And as a part of those discussions, Ziden said, well, I know a guy that could help with the tech stuff. And so he got us together at the North American in St. Louis that year. And we met you and Carolyn and Kirk and Susan. And my wife Jane and I met and talked over the opportunity. And within about, took us about 2 years to raise the support, but we were able to be there in Kenya when we finally opened our doors. And the day we got electricity, I was there and was able to serve alongside you I was there for 10 years and worked with you during your, I guess you were there 6 years before you transitioned back. So yeah, we cut our teeth together doing media stuff for Ziden's work there in Nairobi.
Yeah, and I think it was the second or third of our regional centers in the family of regional centers with GNPI. And we didn't envision in those years, I know your audience, you're going to go, oh my gosh, yeah, but we didn't even know that video was really going to take off yet in those days like it was in Africa. It was doing so in many other places around the world. But so here we were, young families. You came with, I think, 3 girls and had your 4th born on the field there in Nairobi, if I remember right, correct?
Yes, yeah.
And
Shauna came along in '98, 2 years in. So.
There you go. And so got to serve as regional director, Bob as production manager. And then later on, Bob took my role and was the director there, regional director. And then later on, when they, just like our family, felt the call to come back to the U.S. for a variety of reasons, you located in Indianapolis, and then came over to help us, the GNPI, in the role of what we call the international director position. And you began to travel, not just to Kenya, but to other centers around the world. How many years did you do that for our teams, Bob?
I was there for about 7 years and
Okay.
really enjoyed tremendously getting to work and partner with our regional centers around the world. It was a joy to be able to think and brainstorm what has become Project Nomad and to help launch that in its first iteration. And to see now the productions that continue to be produced by some of those original teams to this day. And so, yeah, it's been good to see the network of GNPI growing beyond just regional centers to now nomad teams around the world.
Absolutely. And for our audience, the regional centers have got brick and mortar. Think of them as sort of like your mall, whereas your Amazon delivery of things are just, you're getting services and so forth, but there's no brick and mortar in many cases. And these nomad teams, and nomad meaning national outreach using media and discipleship, was really something that Bob had very close to his heart for a long time. Even an earlier iteration didn't even have that name. And so we've got, we had up to 8-10 teams. I think we have around 5 of them, 5 or 6 now, and they are producing alongside our 8 regional centers. And so Bob was just, in those years, you were just, traveling a lot, not only for the centers, but then birthing this new outgrowth. We've had some conversations in recent days of how, with the pandemic virus, how can we do more online training of finding those people called to merge a mission heart and a media skill set together that would be just the right ticket for Nomad. Tell our audience a little bit of what you see with technology and how to do training today and finding candidates for future Nomad teams.
Yeah, we've realized through the years, especially during those early Nomad efforts, that the cost of going and doing initial trainings, the entry-level production technology training, really had a pretty high cost to it. And yet, at the end of the day, we've also realized that the growth of e-learning options using computer managed learning portals has really made it so much easier to create online learning, e-learning, that allows us to create the content, the lessons, and put it up there online, make it available so that students from around the world can log in and watch those training videos and read the materials that are part of the course, and even take tests to show that they've learned the content. And then we mobilize them to actually work on projects that they can then use for their local ministry purposes. So it has really expanded the options for us to minimize our cost of training. But the trade-off too that we find is even more is that we can spend time to use that training to filter those who are really passionate about using media. We've called them finding that man of media or person of media to help us in a specific location. And once that person's identified, we can tap them and bring them in and start utilizing their services on a more regular basis. So as we look to expand and improve that e-learning options, it's going to be exciting to see how many additional students we can entice to go through the programs, and we can turn around and mobilize them out to do even more projects for the kingdom.
So what we're hearing you say, Bob, is really, and I tell people all the time, when in this COVID crisis that we find ourselves in this global pandemic, we're not able to travel as former missionaries or church pastors and leaders. Locally and globally, the churches aren't able to congregate and gather. But God isn't hindered. He's used technology in some beautiful ways. The media and the internet have been a fabulous duo to continue the work. And as you just talked about, not just of spreading good news, but of training people who can be spreading the good news. Tell me a little bit, and our audience, like you were just doing some training, if I remember right, just yesterday or maybe even earlier today with people very far away. Tell us a little bit about what you were involved in on that training, just to give an idea of what technology is enabling the body of Christ to do today.
Yes, even back when I was working more directly full-time with GNPI, we had developed a partnership with the Lakeview Bible College and Seminary in Chennai, India. Very solid curriculum in Bible study, and they have a MDiv program, and had launched, with our help, a media component to their MDiv program. And so I've been able to go and serve as an adjunct professor for them. I've traveled there at least once a year, sometimes more, to lead courses. Well, with the current lockdown, they've had to send students home, and the college is, empty right now. And yet they decided, let's take our courses online. And so that's what they've done. They've segmented their courses into seminars, and have asked myself in today's session, it was earlier this morning, our time, they had 4 different lecturers take a different portion of the topic, and today's was on digital religion. And so it was addressing some of the questions and concerns that churches are asking about, how does this work for us to make this transition to using digital technologies, not just during this lockdown, but going forward after the lockdown's over. How can we really take advantage of this? And so I was able to be one of 4 presenters during that seminar and help them to basically rethink how you could be more strategic with digital technologies and incorporate that as a very viable and effective strategy for outreach by a local congregation. So,
Yeah, isn't that exciting? I mean, you're sitting in your office inside your home in Indianapolis and able to reach almost literally halfway around the world to hungry students there in Chennai, India. Just is fabulous what the church has at her fingertips, if we'll just imagine and reimagine in that regard. So, and what we're looking at with Nomad is a combination of, doing some of this teaching and training local churches, and then finding in those churches those kind of people that can be the new media missionary to really use social media and the marketing talents and some of what you were teaching to them. Kind of wrapping up, Bob, you've talked and we've talked about how the gospel can be moved with technology in this new era we're living in, the new normal, how you could do educatively training. We talked about Nomad and just what you did just recently. And then in your own personal journey, telemedicine, how they could from your bed, literally. You had 2 different teams medically, as I understand it, were monitoring and watching and consulting and prescribing and all those kind of things. And so those are 3 disciplines that are drastically changing in our world since March as well, and very thankful in lots of ways. As we kind of finish up, Bob, Bob works with us at Good News still on contract basis. Matter of fact, we're going to finish this program and talk about another project when we're done. But what would you like to share with our audience and say, hey, either from the journey of COVID, from my view as a technology media missionary kind of guy, with the faith greater than fear kind of overarching thing, what would you like to share in closing that you learned or want our audience to remember?
I can remember 2 things that came to mind during all this. At one point, as I was starting to feel a little better, the reality of what I was going through really hit me, and I kind of got depressed. Was feeling down, and I remember turning on YouTube and searching for a cappella hymns, and I just remember about 3 hours just sitting there in my bed, trying my best to sing along. And the words of those songs just spoke to me. And it was a comfort. And there I was able to do that because of the internet. I was able to reach out and find something that was encouragement for my soul. And it makes me proud of the work that I have dedicated my life to help others find that kind of encouragement, or finding knowledge of God and His plan of salvation, or using media in a way that can make a difference in the lives of people. So that's a powerful lesson I've learned through this. But second one is, boy, when you can't hug your family for 4 weeks straight, you can't embrace your wife. That's hard. And like we're doing now, Zoom got me through it. And so I really think that, if you know somebody that's struggling, it may not be COVID, it may be, struggling with divorce or substance abuse or whatever it is, you may not be able to wrap your arms around them and give them a hug, but reach out and Zoom and use that as a way to build that relationship and get involved in the lives of people. It'll sure make a huge difference for them and yourself as well. So, I mean, the technology's there. It's just it's not the ideal, but it's a good tool when somebody needs it. So.
Oh, wow. Bob, thank you. Good words. And I hope you heard his heart and you heard reach out. It can be a text, it can be a Zoom. Uh, and thank the Lord for the relationships you do have and for his wisdom in putting worship at our fingertips. Like Bob said, scripture at our fingertips. Shame on us if we don't access it more than we can. Bob Sartoris, thank you very much. And for all of you at home, thank you for tuning into this episode of Faith Greater Than Fear. If you felt in some way Bob has talked to your heart, or you know somebody who really needs to hear what Bob was sharing about, feel free to share it on your social media channels. And until next time, we will hope you will still live a life that is always in your faith greater than fear. God bless you.